The difference between life and death in a prisoner of war camp often came down to a single calorie or a moment of engineered distraction. When the Luftwaffe or the Wehrmacht locked Allied airmen and soldiers behind barbed wire, they inadvertently created think tanks of desperate, highly skilled engineers and survivalists who turned scarcity into a weapon. We are looking at the raw mechanics of survival, where a rusted razor blade became a radio receiver and a discarded tin can became a high-efficiency stove. Before we dissect the specific blueprints and psychological tactics used to dismantle the cage from the inside, make sure you subscribe to Atten Recounts right now so you never miss a deep dive into the forgotten history of human resilience. Surviving a POW camp wasn't about waiting for liberation. It was an active daily war against entropy, malnutrition, and the constant psychological pressure of the enemy. And today we are going to learn exactly how they won that war, using nothing but trash and intellect. Starvation was the primary guard in nearly every camp, more effective than any searchlight or machine gun tower. The German rations were often barely enough to sustain metabolic function, forcing prisoners to treat food distribution as a high-stakes scientific discipline. In camps like Stalag Luft III, the erratic arrival of Red Cross parcels meant that feasting was dangerous and hoarding was essential. But the real genius lay in how they processed the meagre supplies. Prisoners realized quickly that raw consumption was inefficient. They needed to extract every joule of energy from the fuel they had. They developed smokeless stoves from Klim milk tins, powdered milk cans provided by the Red Cross that utilized a hand-cranked bellows system to superheat tiny amounts of fuel. You can apply this thermodynamics principle in a modern survival situation by building a forced-air stove. If you have limited fuel, such as wood chips or paper, simply burning them in an open fire wastes nearly all the heat energy. By creating a combustion chamber from a metal can and using a small pipe to blow air directly into the base of the fire, you create a forge effect. This increases the temperature drastically while consuming a fraction of the fuel. The POWs use this to boil water and cook quickly without creating a smoke column that would alert the guards, proving that controlling airflow is just as important as the fuel source itself when resources are critically low. Information was the most valuable contraband in the camp, and the guards knew it, which is why radios were strictly forbidden and confiscation was punishable by severe solitary confinement. Yet prisoners built crystal radios known as foxhole radios, using materials that were completely invisible to the untrained eye. A safety razor blade acted as the detector, a pencil lead served as the cat's whisker, and copper wire scavenged from the camp's electrical wiring formed the coil. The brilliance here was not just in the electronics, but in the camouflage. These radios could be disassembled in seconds, returning to being just a razor and a pencil, leaving the guards with no evidence of espionage. The practical application for the modern survivalist is understanding the piezoelectric properties of everyday items. You can build a functional receiver without a battery or modern electronics if you understand the fundamentals of radio waves. By heating a safety razor blade until it turns blue, oxidizing the metal, and lightly touching it with a graphite pencil point, you create a crude diode capable of rectifying an AM radio signal. This teaches us that in a grid-down scenario, technology does not disappear. It just becomes cruder. Knowing how to scavenge copper wire from a broken motor and understanding basic circuitry allows you to maintain situational awareness when modern networks fail. The physical walls were difficult to breach, but the psychological walls of the guards were surprisingly porous. The most successful escape committees, like the X organization in Stalag Luft III, understood that the best way to hide a tunnel was to overwhelm the guards with mundane data. They utilized a technique of organized chaos where teams of men would engage in loud, harmless activities, choir practice, wrestling matches, or disorganized games, directly over the sounds of tunnel construction. This wasn't just noise discipline, it was cognitive overloading. By constantly exposing the guards to non-threatening but chaotic stimuli, the prisoners desensitized them to the specific auditory cues of digging or carpentry. This offers a critical lesson in grey man tactics for urban survival or evasion. If you are trying to move unnoticed or conduct preparations without drawing attention, you do not need to be invisible. You simply need to be uninteresting. The POWs survived by appearing compliant and disorganized, masking their deadly efficiency. If you are ever in a hostile environment, blending in does not mean hiding in a corner. It often means engaging in the expected behavior of the crowd so thoroughly that you become background noise to the observer. The German guards were looking for secrecy, so the prisoners gave them noise, effectively blinding them with sound. The men inside these camps did not survive by accident. They survived because they refused to accept the reality presented to them by their captors. They looked at a tin can and saw a stove. They looked at a razor blade and saw a radio. They looked at a chaotic yard and saw a cover for a tunnel. That mindset, the ability to re-engineer your environment regardless of the restrictions, is the ultimate survival skill. If you found value in this breakdown of history and survival, make sure you share this video with someone who needs to know these skills and subscribe to Atten Recounts for more serious investigations into the past.